Everybody, welcome. I'm Rebecca Pickens. If you haven't been around here before, I am a book coach and developmental editor. Today we are going to talk all about archetypes. I was really excited when a member of my group coaching program brought this to our call the other day because I think that archetypes are something that lots of writers are consciously working with and are always looking for new ideas to consider. But I also think that there are a lot of us using archetypes and we don't even recognize that. And sometimes naming the thing that is working well for us can be really helpful as well. So today I want to dig into what an archetype is, why it can be helpful, but I also want to look at some of the ways that it can be restrictive. So we're going to talk about the good and the bad, and I'm going to also along the way offer you some resources, some books that I recommend to my clients that can be really helpful in helping you get a little more granular and really dig into this. So let's take a look. So if you clicked on this video, you probably know what an archetype is, but just in case, let's review. An archetype is simply a recognizable pattern of behavior, role, or energy that shows up in the characters who are in your stories. Then here's a part that I want to dig into where I think things get a little bit more interesting, a little bit more nuanced, and that is remembering that an archetype is not a personality test, nor is it a fixed identity. We've all seen those kinds of programs. They're sort of flat, the movie with the jock or the cheerleader or the nerd or the brainy kid, right? And those archetypes tend to ultimately be kind of frustrating because they become fixed. So we're going to talk about the way that we can think about characters having reoccurring tendencies in terms of how they show up in the world, but then how we can mix things up a little bit and make them more interesting. So there are lots of different ways that archetypes can show up in fiction, and they show up in memoir too. If you are a memoir writer, welcome. I love memoir. I love coaching memoir. This applies to your stories as well. So we have common examples of archetypes that will pop up regularly. We have the caregiver, that character who is supportive and protective and sacrifices for the good of others in your story. We have the rebel who resists and disrupts and challenges things. We have the ruler who controls and stabilizes and leads, maybe a very wise character. We have the seeker who searches and questions and maybe escapes as a result of all that thinking. These patterns, and there are so many others, of course, but these patterns feel familiar because we've seen them in many different stories. We've seen them since we were kids. And our brains like things that are familiar and easy and kind of what we're expecting. That is an invitation for our brain to get cozy, comfortable, and give a story a shot. And that is why it often feels good when we see these archetypes pop up in our reading. Archetypes quickly orient you to a character so you can get your footing as a reader. They establish a consistent baseline behavior. And that is why so many writers are anxious to work with archetypes, because there's nothing harder to do than rein in a character halfway through your story who's gone off and done something unexpected. There's joy in that, of course, too. But sometimes we feel like our character has gone off in a direction that we didn't necessarily mean to send them. And it can be helpful. Archetypes give us that baseline behavior that we can continuously revisit so that we can say, oh, my character wouldn't do this, or yeah, maybe my character would do this. It gives us a sense of coherence very early on in a story as to who your character is going to be and maybe how they're going to navigate certain difficulties. So archetypes answer, what kind of presence is this character going to have in this story? That's fundamental. If you are looking for some resources to continue with after this video, I will leave some links in the comments section to these books. These are the ones that I most often recommend to my clients. This gives you a good sampling of information about archetypes, how to work with them, how to test them in your own story. Highly, highly recommend all of these. So where do writers get stuck with archetypes? An archetype can tell you what a character resembles, but it's going to leave some things out. For example, it doesn't fully explain why a character makes a specific choice in a specific scene in your unique story. An archetype can't explain why a character contradicts themselves, why their behavior intensifies under pressure, or how a character begins to change over time. And that's where additional structure, additional information that comes from you, the writer, becomes absolutely necessary. This is in order to avoid that flat jock character or a cheerleader. Now, to make your archetype work on the page, you are going to need more than just the type of character. We also need cause. We need to know why the brilliant scientist character responds the way they do. Why does the caregiver respond the way they do? What shaped these patterns in your archetypes? It could be a wound, it could be a belief, a role they had to learn to play. Any number of different causes can make your character respond the way they do. But these are all the kinds of points that make your character more interesting, more robust, more full of texture and layers that are interesting to read. So you can think about it like this. Archetype gives your character a pattern, something that we know as the reader we can come to trust and accept. But the cause is what makes your archetype not a flat character. It's what makes them much more interesting. It's what makes them feel real. So let me show you what I mean. These are some of the causes that could make your character behave a certain way. So we could have a wound, what shaped them to be who they are, a misbelief in terms of what they now believe is true. They may have some kind of a protective strategy that they employ, even when it's not helpful, in order to stay safe. They may have a longing, something they deeply want. They may feel pressure, and that is forcing change. That is going to be the thing that makes your character forced to make decisions, that's going to exhibit contradictions. It's going to lead to escalation in your scenes. So, no matter what you throw at your character, these are going to be the things that force them to make decisions. It's going to be the things that show them being contradictory in their actions. It's going to cause your scenes to escalate. So these causes are very, very important. They're fundamental in showing us who your character is. So here's an example. Let's go with the caregiver archetype. So here's your engine, here's your cause. Let's say their wound was love was conditional. Their misbelief was, I must earn my place. I must learn, I must earn love. So their strategy might have become over-functioning for others at great cost to their own self. And they would maybe always feel this longing to be loved without performing. Maybe they really yearn for that special kind of unconditional love that they never received. So on the page, this is going to show up as that character constantly helping even when people don't need help or want the help, even when it hurts that character, they are continuously giving and giving. And at the that's what we might see on the top layer, but maybe deep down inside, resentment starts to burn very quietly at first. But as the story progresses, we see more and more resentment building. And then suddenly, maybe at a time when they really are needed, they just bail. They refuse to help. And this in turn pushes intimacy away with the people who have been counting on them. And suddenly we've got a really messy story that is going to be a lot of fun to read. So we have consistency in the sense that we've got that archetype character. We've got that baseline that we can continuously revisit, make sure that we're basically aligned with that archetype. But then we do this twist. We've got this variation where suddenly that character is not acting the way that the people expected them to, both the readers and the characters in the story. And that's where things get really interesting. But it's always this new behavior is always pushing back on that archetype you've established at the beginning of your story. So the conflict comes from butting up against what's expected. Okay, so what does this mean for your novel or memoir? Why does it matter? I want you to, if you walk away with nothing else from this video, remember, consistency does not mean that the character you are creating is going to act the same way every single time. It means their behavior is growing from that internal logic. that internal logic that comes from being the archetype that you have selected for them. That is what makes a character feel real. That's what makes a character feel possible. So how do you apply this to your story? And you can ask these questions of your characters, whether you are in the beginning of writing your book or at the end and you're working through revisions. These questions are ones that I encourage writers to revisit over and over and over again because things can get haywire kind of along the way really easily, right? And this reins us back in and helps us check in to make sure that we're staying the course. So for your main character, where at whatever stage you are at in the writing process, ask, what has hurt your main character? And as a result of that, what did they come to believe about themselves? How do they protect themselves? And what is it they really want? And then you ask yourself, where does the story make that strategy fail? All these things that they're doing to protect themselves or um, get something. How is that strategy that they have employed failing? Because that is where the heart of your story lies. That's where the transformation is going to happen. That's what readers are tuning in to find out. So I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions or comments, please stick them in the comments section. I would love to hear about them. I read every comment. I will try to reply to every question. And also, I would like to invite you now to Story Circle. This is my free weekly writing sprint. It is so much fun. We meet every Wednesday at 3 o'clock Eastern Time. We write for an hour. You can write with your camera on or off. You can stay for 10 minutes. You can stay for the full hour. It's just a really fantastic, fun, relaxed way to connect with others and write together. It's highly motivated. It's one of the most productive hours of my week, and I know a lot of other writers feel the same. So if you would like to know more about this, please, I will have a link in the comments section and you can link to it to get updates. If this video was helpful, please hit like and subscribe. I drop new videos every Tuesday. And if you have a question you would like me to explore on a video just like this one, please let me know. Drop it in the comment section and I will try to respond. And up next, check out this video on character quirk. Find out how to deepen your characters in interesting ways with their own little unique traits and quirks without coming off too gimmicky. All right, till next time, happy writing, everyone.